Imhotep, everybody. This is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network and host of the African History Network show. Did you miss another session of my class today, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa? Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We had a great class session today. We actually did 3 hours. Here's some of the topics that we discussed. We continued our conversation dealing with the decline of Moorish power in Spain. We talked some about this book here, Golden Age of the Moor, edited by Dr. Ivy Van Sertima. We talked some about Dr. Jose Pimenta Bay's contribution to this book, and continued discussion about a lecture that Dr. Jose Pimenta Bay did in the 1990s, dealing with the decline of Moorish power in Spain. We talked about the Crusades beginning in 1096 AD, and purgatory and the Dark Ages. And the first Crusades, which is 1096 to 1099. That's also discussed in this book that we discussed today, Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust, Slavery and the Rise of European Capitalism, by Dr. John Henrik Clarke. So the Crusades take place during the period of time that the Moors are in Europe, 711 AD up until 1492. They're in various portions of Europe. We know they go in and settle in the Iberian Peninsula, what they call Al-Andalus, or southern Spain. And the Crusades are a fight between the Christians and Muslims over the Holy Land, over Jerusalem, and safe passage to Jerusalem. There are going to be 8 or 9 Crusades. You're going to have thousands of people who were killed. And it is reminiscent, as I talked about on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday, October 13th, 2023. It's reminiscent of what's going on in Israel and the Gaza Strip right now, a fight between Jews and Muslims. So we discussed pages 18, starting with pages 18 through about 22 of Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust, Slavery and the Rise of European Capitalism, because it deals with the Crusades. We also talked about the bubonic plague, the Black Death of 1347 to 1400. And Europe is going to lose between 1/4 to 1/3 of their population. You're going to have estimates are anywhere between 25 million to 75 million people during that period of time, 1347 to 1400. So we dealt with that and dispelled the myth that it was spread by rats. It was spread more by person to person. Okay, the Black Death. And Europe, as Dr. John Henrik Clarke talked about, were land poor, people poor, and resource poor, as they're starting to explore and other lands. And we know that they're using nautical instruments based upon technology that the African Moors introduced into Europe. We know Christopher Columbus was using, one of the instruments he was using was called an astrolabe, which was based upon technology that the Moors introduced into Europe. We talked about Sinterklaas, or St. Nicholas, Sinterklaas, which is Dutch, and this was a Dutch mythological figure, partly based upon St. Nicholas, who was a real person of African descent, who lived 3rd century, 4th century in Myra, which is modern day Turkey. We know he becomes a bishop. Later, he becomes a saint. And his feast day is December 6th, which is the day that he died. But we talked about Sinterklaas and Zwarte Piet, Black Pete, Zwarte Piet. And we dealt with how you have the celebration of Black Pete, Zwarte Piet, in the Netherlands, okay, in Holland, and Black Pete was a Moor. And you have this celebration where they have parades in the Netherlands in early November through December 5th. And Europeans put on blackface, they put on red lipstick, afro wigs, and regalia resembling the way Moors dressed in the 16th century, 17th century. And you have people who are dressed up like Sinterklaas as well. And this is commemorating Sinterklaas and Zwarte Piet coming into the Netherlands, but they say they come from Spain on a steamboat. And we know Spain is where the Moors go on in 711 AD, and Tariq ibn Ziyad, the general who leads the Moorish army in, they land at a rock promontory that's named Jebel Tariq, Tariq's mountain, or we know it as Gibraltar, or the Rock of Gibraltar. So we discuss Sinterklaas and Zwarte Piet and how there's a fight in the Netherlands, an increasing fight against celebrating Black Pete, Zwarte Piet, because he's looked at as being a racist figure because you have Europeans wearing blackface. We also talked about Blackamoor jewelry, and this is another example of the legacy of the Moors in Europe, but also Blackamoor jewelry symbolizes racial conquest, the conquering of the Moors, because it's a jewelry that depicts African people oftentimes in subservient positions. And Princess Michael of Kent, back in December of 2017, when she met with Meghan Markle, when Meghan Markle was engaged to Prince Harry, Princess Michael of Kent attends a luncheon to meet Meghan Markle, and she's wearing a Blackamoor brooch. So this caused a big uproar about people. So there was an article from the dailymail.co.uk that talked about distressed Princess Michael of Kent apologizes for wearing a racist Blackamoor brooch to meet Meghan at the Queen's Christmas lunch and promises to retire it. So we dealt with some of the history of this Blackamoor jewelry and some of the history of the Moors. This ties into that history as well. We continued our discussion about the Crusades, and then we talked about the Knights Templar. So the Knights Templar come into existence around 1118 AD, somewhere around the time of the Second Crusades, and they are dealing with the teachings, some of the teachings that the Moors introduced into Europe. So the Moors are going to educate people freely, educate Europeans freely. And the Knights Templar are going to become very powerful. They're going to set up banks. They acquire land. And these are some of the smartest people in Europe. You know, when the Moors go in, 85-90% of Europeans are illiterate. You have kings and queens who can't read or write. So the Knights Templar become very powerful. We know that in France, you're going to have a group that are rounded up October 13th, 1307. They're going to be tortured. They're going to be disbanded. And this is on Friday the 13th. So this is one of the reasons why Friday the 13th is said to be an unlucky number or an unlucky date, because this was said to be the day that the knowledge stopped. Okay, there's a whole history, and I have a lecture dealing with Friday the 13th and fricatriskaidekaphobia. Fricatriskaidekaphobia is the fear or the unfounded fear of the number 13. Okay, so you want to check that information out as well. I have we've dealt with that on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep. So we talked about the Knights Templar, and when the Knights Templar are disbanded, those teachings will go underground. They're going to resurface as the Yorkshire Rites of the Freemasons, as the Rosicrucians, and other societies with secrets. Some people call them secret societies. Tony Browder, my friend Tony Browder, calls them societies with secrets. We know those teachings are going to come here to this land because 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons, but we know the teachings, the foundation of the teachings in Freemasonry comes from the Nile Valley region of Africa and comes from the teachings in the ancient Egyptian mystery schools or the ancient Kemetic mystery systems. So we discussed the Knights Templar, the Knights Templar losing power as well. And then we got into a discussion about Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust, slavery, and the rise of European capitalism. But we also talked about negative stereotypical images of African Americans, the image of the coon, the mammy, the Sambo. We talked about a little bit Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization by Tony Browder. This is one of the books we used in the class we mentioned today. Golden Age of the Moor, edited by Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. Now, you don't have to buy any of these books. We show you excerpts on the screen of the text that we're talking about. Black Star, the African Presence in Early Europe, by Runoko Rashidi, who was a friend of mine. We know Runoko's an ancestor. This book as well. Then also, we talked about, when we got into the subject dealing with negative stereotypical images that we see that were in the minstrel shows, and we dealt with the origin of the minstrel shows going back to 1828 in T.D. Rice, Thomas Dartmouth Rice, because they're taking negative stereotypical images of African Americans during slavery. And the dehumanization of African people have always been entertainment in this country. So we see this creation of the Jim Crow character by Thomas Dartmouth Rice, T.D. Rice, who was known as an Ethiopian delineator. He was a white male performer on stage. And the minstrel shows are going to spread throughout the country. They're going to be the one of the most popular forms of entertainment in the country, but they also are going to spread into Europe, and they're going to travel throughout Europe as well. And when we see those stereotypical images, we see the stereotypical image of Zwarte Piet, Black Pete, which is created in 1850 in a children's story, in a children's book, okay, in Europe. Now, this book here, Blacks in American Films and Television, an Illustrated Encyclopedia by Donald Bogle. Now, Donald Bogle is known as the godfather of black cinema. Now, this is one of the books we reference in the class, and I referenced the section of this book that talked about the movie The Birth of a Nation. The Birth of a Nation debuted February 8, 1915, directed by D.W. Griffith. It was took $100,000 to make the movie. It was a 3-hour movie. It was the longest movie, most expensive movie at the time. It was a silent movie, and this movie is going to rejuvenate the Ku Klux Klan. It takes place during slavery, the Civil War, and the Reconstruction era, 1865 to 1877, and all the negative stereotypical images of African Americans that we saw at that time, we see depicted in the movie. So that movie is going to rejuvenate the Ku Klux Klan. And we talked about the negative stereotypical image of the coon and zip coon and mammy, different things like this. And I referenced Ferris State University's Jim Crow Museum and David Pilgrim, who is the curator of the Jim Crow Museum. We also talked about this book here by, this is another book by Donald Bogle that deals with Toms, Coons, Mulattoes, Mammies, and Bucks, okay? An interpretive history of Black American films. And when we dealt with Sinterklaas and Zwarte Piet, Black Pete, we know that Sinterklaas is going to be brought to this country by the Dutch in the early 1700s or so. And from that image of Sinterklaas, who had a red cape and a white outfit, long white beard, you're going to get the secular figure of Santa Claus. Santa Claus means St. Nicholas. It all goes back to that source of Bishop Nicholas, okay, in Myra, which is modern day Turkey. Well, back in 2010, when I was doing my research on the origins of Christmas, so I could do my lectures on Christmas, this is one of the books that I use. We reference this book today in the class because it talks about Black Peter or Zwarte Piet in this book. Christmas Miscellany, Everything You Always Want to Know About Christmas by Jonathan Green. It's one of the best books that you read dealing with the origins of Christmas, okay? So we talked about that and started beginning the origins of the transatlantic slave trade. So we did 3 hours today. Join us next Saturday, October 21st. We're going to continue this discussion. If you haven't registered for this online course, it's a 12-week or 12-module online course because it's gone past 12 weeks. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch them anytime. Visit my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com or TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Takes you to the same destination. Register for the class right now. It's on sale, 54% off. You can use this information with your children. I would say the content is PG-13. There was also some short video clips that we watched today in the class to reinforce the information that we discussed. And we go through this history and look at this history chronologically. We do it thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. We go through and analyze the transatlantic slave trade. Next class, we'll continue with Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust, slavery and the rise of European capitalism, because we're going to go through pages 22 through about 30. And then we're going to get into the transatlantic slave trade expanding. We talked some about Columbus's voyages today. He never came to the land we call the United States of America. We know October 12th commemorated when Columbus landed in the Bahamas, okay? His first of 4 voyages, he set sail August 3rd, 1492, late in the same year that the Moors lose control of their last stronghold in Spain, which was Granada. That was January 2nd, 1492. That was during the Spanish Granada Wars between Spain and the Moors, okay? So we're going to continue dealing with the transatlantic slave trade and Christopher Columbus. Columbus is essential to understanding the transatlantic slave trade because he helps to lay the foundation for slavery, racism, capitalism, and the exploitation of indigenous people. And this is going to lead to things like the Asiento de Negros of August 1518, when King Charles V signs the Asiento, which greatly expands the transatlantic slave trade in the Occidental was a license that Spain gave to slave trading countries and slave traders to provide enslaved Africans to Spanish territories, to Spain and Spanish colonies. All right, so we're going to get into further discussion in our next class, okay? So we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. Even after the course is over with, you still have full access. So a year from now, 2 years from now, you can go back and watch the entire course. Register right now, watch the class. Our Sunday class that we teach is discounted as well. That's 54% off. That class is Black Resistance Movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968. And that's a fantastic class. We go through and look at that history chronologically. So we have another class coming up in a couple of Sundays for that one, September 22nd. The African History Network show will be on live Sunday, October 14th, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on our social media platforms, The African History Network on Facebook, Michael Imhotep on YouTube, Michael Imhotep on my personal Facebook page. Our guest will be Abayomi Ezekwe. We're going to deal with the Israeli Hamas war and some of the history between the conflict between Israel and Palestine and the Palestinians. We'll deal with that. We'll deal with that history, and we'll talk about some other current topics also. All right, if you want to support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. We have the information right on the homepage of our website. Remember, right now, it's correct wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever. Watch me on Fridays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Download the Black Star Media app. Follow Roland on YouTube, Roland Martin on YouTube, and Roland Martin on Facebook. And support the African History Network. Register for our online classes. Remember, right now, it's correct wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.